I, in my heart of hearts, believe that you are capable of doing something to my kid.
We have to have some kind of happy medium. So for example,
no, we don't. No, we don't. Because again, we conflate the two things. He might. I let you go, bro.
No, you didn't. I was talking.
Mark, you just said, can we let you rock for 20 seconds? You finish your point, and then I started speaking.
And then you finished, and I was talking.
I wasn't done.
Okay, then finish.
But so, like I'm saying.
Marc, Lamont, Hill, and Ish go to war. Yeah, that's right. On the last interview episode they had with N.O.R.E. called Rap Purgatory, Ish and Marc Lamont got really heated. And I think it was mostly coming from Ish, but it represents a real issue because this is a problem that Ish has. He often cuts people off. He isn't understanding. And it's represented in not just Ish, but also Melissa Ford. Like, this guy finds a reason to disagree with Melissa Ford for any type of thing. And on top of that, it's not even like Melissa Ford is trying to battle him all the time. I think of all the people on the show that is accused of dogpiling, which to me is an invented term somewhat in podcasting, it's Ish that's the most problematic because he's looking for the disagreement. But in this back and forth with Marc and Ish are talking about, family rights when two parents are going through a separation, hearkening back to the DDG situation. And Ish gets so heated. He gets so angry that he tells Marc, yo, you didn't let me finish. But he was the one not letting people finish. And Marc was very understanding. This has happened a couple times before. And I think Marc kind of just analyzing the situation, trying to be gentle with Ish, because he knows if he gets too crazy, it could cause a bad environment for the pod. Now, by get too crazy, I mean the condescending, the disrespect that, not the flip stuff, but more of the, passive aggressive stuff that people accuse me of. And then Ish is going to start to get dejected and feeling insecure on the pod. So I think Marc is taking the tack that, all right, everything's going good on the Joe Budden Network. I got the Ian and Marc show. I'm doing very well on the Joe Budden podcast. On top of that, I'm getting more responsibilities with Podwives. So this argument right here in this Patreon episode, I really don't need to go that hard. Now, as for how this might evolve moving forward, I think at one point the gloves is going to come off, and I don't think Ish is going to be prepared, just because I know a lot of people are going to accuse me of glaze. I've been accused of glazing Marc. But there's just bottom line facts. Marc is a broadcast professional. He has more experience than Joe Budden in broadcasting. He even is someone who is academic. So he's aware of certain argumentative tactics that will disarm Ish. And the only reason he's not using it is because he wants to make sure that the chemistry of the podcast is paramount. That's my guess. That's my understanding. That's how I view this back and forth. The episode is called Rap Purgatory, but this episode was filled with a lot of other things. One being the N.O.R.E. participation. N.O.R.E. was a guest, and I think here you see the issues with N.O.R.E. as a creator, as a podcaster. He didn't make any salient points throughout the whole episode. He was rambling. This is allegedly. He looked drunk to me. And I know you're going to be like, Danny, he does drink champs. Of course he was drunk. I get it, but it's not a high-functioning drunk. And he just disrupted the whole episode, which is why I could never really get into drink champs. He is disruptive to thoughtful dialogue. And even on his own episodes of Drink Champs, he just messes up the whole vibe. Somebody could be talking about, the founding of hip-hop and how somebody saved themselves from, taking a wrong turn in life. And N.O.R.E. be like, nah. I remember I was on the set with Cormega, and then Capone came, and we were crazy with the women. Oh, that's the type of stuff he does. And even though the Joe Budden podcast does do that sometimes, it's a little too much with him. And it disrupts the flow. And what you saw here was maybe Joe could have kept a couple of mics home and not have N.O.R.E on the show with other people, but it just really wasn't all that good to me. I think the podcast episode would have been better without N.O.R.E. And I don't see the N.O.R.E episode on YouTube, which is interesting because I would think you would want to put your N.O.R.E episode on YouTube, but he didn't choose to do that. Maybe it's because of how bad the content was. And even if you look at the Patreon comments, a lot of people didn't like N.O.R.E. Also, this episode was where Emani chose to stick up for himself.
I do think there's a balance that needs to happen with me that I feel like I wanted to just expound to y'all. I think for a long time I've allowed the joke to be not too much, but it's probably been the crux of my involvement at a certain point. And for me as a person who feels like I'm more than just being a joke or a part of a joke, I don't want that to be the consistent thing that's happening, especially when guests are now starting to think that they can do so.
Very interesting. I know that in my interview with him, he said that he told the cast that he doesn't necessarily feel comfortable. Now, this all stemmed from the episode with Young Berg. Young Berg went up there and he was dissing the cast left and right. And I kind of see where Emani was coming from and even where Flip was coming from. It's okay if like Joe makes fun of the cast, but when the guests start coming up there and think that they can do it, that is when it's a little odd. And I felt like that's when Emani started to realize, like, yo, people really think I'm a clown. Not only does Joe and Marc and Flip make fun of me, but now I got Young Berg making fun of me. Isn't this the same dude that was like the punching bag of hip hop for a little bit with the whole Mano situation? Why is he making fun of me? I know he got money, but it's like, it's not cool. So, I mean, I don't know how Emani is going to really deal with that because it's kind of hard to undo a bad first impression. Like, I think there's this statistic that like it takes 33 more meets with somebody to undo a bad first impression. And the way he introduced himself to the audience was as the broke friend who was derelict, who had baby mama issues and all of this other stuff. Now, I know in my interview he outlined how that's not really the case and more clips are coming from that, but it still is something that I think we have to analyze and break down over time and hope he can kind of find a new character on the show because I think this one's going to stick. But let me know what you think about all of this. Let me know what you think about the Ish and Marc Lamont Hill back and forth. That's going to get ugly, guys. Then we also have the N.O.R.E messing up the Joe Budden pod. And then we have Emani trying to get back his credentials and be respected on air. Like, I think he's respected off air, but on air, people just kind of diss the crap out of him. All right, y'all. Got more videos coming today, so stay tuned for that. Tap in with my Patreon. I recently had Mandy, of all people, on my spaces, and that's on Patreon. Mandy and me have a history, so you're going to have to tune in to see if we got down again. And then I also had Emani, Joe Budden, and Marc join, and that's all on Patreon. I also have a video about EYL coming today, so just stay tuned because there's a lot of things going on all fronts. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.
Sometimes